It wasn't just a car chase movie. It was a chess match disguised as a heist, a ghost story wrapped in smoke and gunmetal. Ronin didn't arrive with the thunder of a blockbuster, but it embedded itself deep like a memory you're not sure you lived or dreamt. Directed by John Frankenheimer, a filmmaker obsessed with control, paranoia, and the fine line between loyalty and delusion, Ronin was a cold-blooded throwback in an era addicted to CGI. It was analog fury in a digital decade. The cast read like a gathering of cinematic assassins. Robert De Niro, Reno, Natasha McElhone, Stellan Skarsgård, but even they were kept in the dark. Scripts were redacted, motivations withheld, dialogue altered on the spot. The result? A palpable sense of unease, tension, and mistrust that bled right through the screen. And that famous briefcase? No one, not even the characters, was ever allowed to know what was inside. This was a film that defied Hollywood logic. It let real cars crash at terrifying speeds on the streets of Paris. It buried exposition beneath looks and silences. It paid homage to samurai lore, while never once uttering the word honor directly. It asked its actors to lie to each other and to themselves. And decades later, Ronin remains one of the most quietly influential thrillers ever made. One that filmmakers dissect in private, that stunt coordinators whisper about like legend, because underneath its steel surface and minimalist cool are layers of secrets, rivalries, regrets, and choices made in the name of things no one could quite define. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Ronin, 1998. Fact 1. The briefcase that meant nothing. In a film defined by precision, the most central object was pure abstraction. The briefcase sought, stolen, killed for, was never opened, never explained. Viewers speculated: nuclear codes, mafia secrets, lost intelligence files. But when asked, director John Frankenheimer simply replied, "It doesn't matter." The script deliberately excluded any detail about its contents. Even the cast was kept guessing. Reno once admitted in an interview that he believed it was a MacGuffin with no face, a device meant to manipulate, not to resolve. What made this more disorienting was how seriously the characters took it. They were willing to die for something they couldn't even describe. In many ways, the briefcase became a mirror, reflecting each character's desperation, loyalty, or disillusionment. Was it really the case they wanted, or the purpose it gave them? The most uncomfortable twist? The briefcase didn't just lack content, it lacked meaning. And that, perhaps, was the point. When you're trained to follow orders, kill targets, and walk away, you stop asking why. You just chase. Fact 2. De Niro demanded tactical perfection. Robert De Niro didn't just play a former CIA operative, he trained like one. Prior to filming, De Niro underwent extensive weapons training with former intelligence consultants hired by Frankenheimer. Every movement, reload, and line of sight was scrutinized. In one scene, De Niro rejected the idea of shooting from behind cover unless he could physically verify line of sight, mirroring real CIA protocol. Frankenheimer let him override the stunt team. That level of control even extended to driving sequences. De Niro refused to fake wheel, turning, or react to green screen projections. "If I'm in the car, I want the car moving," he insisted. His stunt double was only used in scenes requiring dangerous, high-speed reverse driving. It wasn't just method acting, it was obsessive precision, and it showed. Military veterans later praised his posture, trigger, discipline, and calm under fire. But the true irony? He brought more realism to a fictional mercenary than most actual thrillers gave to their supposed heroes. Fact 3. The script was a puzzle withheld from the cast. In Ronin, even the actors didn't know who to trust because the script was designed that way. Frankenheimer deliberately withheld pages from the cast, revealing scenes only days or hours before shooting. The goal? To replicate genuine tension. The actors were constantly uncertain of their character's arc, or the loyalties of those around them. Stellan Skarsgård later revealed that he believed his character Gregor was a good man until day 20 of shooting, when he received pages turning him into a cold betrayer. Natasha McElhone described feeling betrayed by the story at several points, not knowing which version of her character would appear next. What emerged on screen wasn't acting, it was psychological fragmentation. Everyone was second-guessing motives. Real anxiety bled into scenes of deception and double-crossing. In a way, Ronin became a live experiment in cinematic paranoia, and the audience, they weren't just watching a spy thriller, they were watching confusion, mistrust, and shifting allegiances unfold in real time because no one involved was ever completely sure of the truth. Fact 4. The car chases weren't just real, they were chaos. No CGI, no speed ramping, no trick editing. The car chases in Ronin were as raw as they looked because they were real. Frankenheimer, a former amateur race car driver, insisted that all high-speed sequences be captured practically, with trained stunt drivers tearing through the actual streets of Paris, Nice, and Arles. But here's the deeper madness. Many of those streets weren't completely closed. For some sequences, the production had partial permits, meaning cars driven by unsuspecting civilians were on the same roads. The result? An adrenaline-charged mixture of precision driving and unpredictable danger. Over 300 stunt drivers were used throughout filming, many of them former rally competitors. One of the most brutal shots of BMW skidding in reverse under fire was done in real traffic, with a rigged steering mechanism letting the car appear driven from the passenger seat while the real driver hid in the back. The risk was enormous, but so was the payoff. The irony? Most modern audiences assume the chase was computer-enhanced. In truth, Ronin might be one of the last great analog car chase epics, more bullet than born. Fact 5. A screenwriter removed his name in protest. David Mamet, Pulitzer-winning playwright, screenwriter of Glengarry Glen Ross, worked extensively on Ronin's script. He rewrote dialogue, restructured scenes, and added layers of ambiguity, but when the Writers Guild denied him sole credit, forcing a shared byline with original screenwriter J.D. Zeik, Mamet pulled his name from the final cut, using the pseudonym Richard Weiss instead. Frankenheimer later admitted that Mamet's version was vastly more sophisticated than the initial draft, focusing less on action and more on philosophy and betrayal. Mamet's fingerprints are everywhere. In the clipped exchanges, the pregnant silences, the cryptic moral codes, the true tension? The film's moral ambiguity may stem directly from that authorship conflict. Two writers, two visions, one of clarity, one of haze. The result is a story that always seems one step ahead of the viewer, but never quite tells you where it's going or why. Fact 6. The title refers to samurai. Without saying so, Ronin means a samurai without a master. It's an ancient Japanese term soaked in shame, exile, and existential drift. But Ronin, 1998, never says the word samurai. It never leans into Eastern iconography, never references feudal Japan, and yet the metaphor lingers in every frame. Frankenheimer stated he wanted to craft a story about warriors out of time, men who served causes that no longer existed, now reduced to selling their skills to the highest bidder. The prologue even features a subtle reference to the 47 Ronin, Japan's most famous tale of lost honor and group sacrifice. The characters in Ronin move like trained swordsmen in a gunfight era. De Niro's calm, Jean Reno's loyalty, Skarsgård's cold pragmatism, all point to a fractured code of Bushido. But by stripping away overt reference, the film leaves the audience to draw the line themselves. It doesn't hand you, meaning it makes you hunt it, like a Ronin would. Fact 7. Jean Reno refused to speak English off camera. Jean Reno, the quietly intense Vincent, made a deliberate choice behind the scenes. During production, he refused to speak English off camera. Though fluent, Reno insisted on communicating exclusively in French with the crew and even fellow actors. His reasoning? He wanted to stay rooted in his character's outsider status, a French operative among international mercenaries. Frankenheimer allowed the behavior, even encouraged it. The distance it created between Reno and the English-speaking cast subtly translated to on-screen dynamics. De Niro and Reno's characters bond through mutual respect rather than cultural camaraderie. Their dialogue is clipped, their expressions do more work than their words. Reno's choice wasn't method acting, it was strategic detachment. He understood that Vincent wasn't there to belong, he was there to observe, protect, and vanish. And here's the haunting payoff. When Reno breaks character in the film, when he shows concern or humor, it hits harder, because his emotional restraint is so carefully guarded. Silence, in his case, wasn't absence. It was armored. Fact 8. The pigeon sniper sequence was added last minute. One of Ronin's most chilling moments is a quiet one. The assassin perched above the square, his scope hovering over pigeons and people. That sequence wasn't in the original script. It was added late in production. Based on a real story, Frankenheimer had read about a Sarajevo sniper who used pigeons as cover practice before taking human lives. The crew built the bell tower set in record time. The actor playing the sniper was given minimal direction. Just breathe and wait, Frankenheimer told him. The scene runs less than a minute, but it adds layers. Moral erosion, the normalization of death, the silence before chaos. It also reframes the rest of the film. What seems like organized crime becomes, momentarily, a meditation on what happens when war tactics become freelance business. The chilling irony? The pigeons weren't trained. They were wild, and some refused to fly on cue, so they improvised. What you see on screen is part choreography, part uncontrolled threat, just like The Job. Fact 9. The film was shot in sequence but not for creative reasons. Most films are shot out of order for efficiency. Ronin did the opposite. Frankenheimer demanded it be filmed largely in sequence, scene by scene, from beginning to end. It wasn't an artistic choice. It was a logistical one. He didn't trust the script. With constant rewrites, withheld pages, and ongoing edits by Mamet, the story's tone was constantly shifting. Shooting in order gave Frankenheimer more control to adapt performances, reframe scenes, and build tension without losing coherence. The unexpected result? The actors began to feel the story's descent into paranoia. As their characters unraveled, so did their own grasp on the plot. Emotional fatigue, trust issues, subtle shifts in tone, they weren't manufactured, they were lived. And that subtle breakdown? You can see it in the eyes, especially De Niro's. By the final scenes, he doesn't look like a man acting exhaustion. He looks like a man who's been dragged through a narrative that refuses to make anything easy. Fact 10. The dialogue was rewritten on set, with no credit. If some of Ronin's dialogue feels too sharp to have been written months in advance, that's because it wasn't. Frankenheimer and De Niro regularly rewrote entire exchanges on set, sometimes minutes before filming. Actors were pulled aside, handed new lines, and asked to say it like it was never written, but none of those edits made it into official credits. In one scene, De Niro pauses and tells Reno, "Whenever there's any doubt, there is no doubt." The line became iconic, quoted in forums, copied in thrillers, but it wasn't in the shooting script. Frankenheimer said it came from a former CIA operative he knew. De Niro liked it so much, he insisted it be added. This rewriting wasn't about ego, it was about clarity. Mamet's draft was often cryptic, full of layered meaning. Frankenheimer wanted ice-cold precision. The result is a script that walks a razor's edge, cryptic enough to intrigue, sharp enough to wound. But the true irony? Some of Ronin's most famous lines are uncredited, undocumented, and possibly unrepeatable. Fact 11. Natasha McElhone was cast for her uncertainty. Casting Natasha McElhone as the ambiguous, unreadable Deirdre wasn't about star power, it was about tone. Frankenheimer reportedly wanted someone who looked like she was always thinking something darker. McElhone had just emerged from The Truman Show, and her distant gaze and clip delivery struck the director immediately. But the real twist? She wasn't told whether her character was manipulating everyone or being manipulated until the final days of shooting. Even then, she received conflicting notes from Frankenheimer and the producers. Her performance, cold but fragile, assertive but cornered, wasn't designed. It was lived. Every scene became a test. Was she in control or just surviving? Even her accent wavers subtly between scenes, an unintentional echo of the character's fractured identity. Years later, McElhone admitted she still doesn't know what Deirdre's ultimate agenda was. And that ambiguity, ironically, is what made her unforgettable. Fact 12. Frankenheimer hired real intelligence veterans as extras. Look closely at the background operatives, the silent drivers, the stone-faced men passing documents. Many weren't actors, they were ex-intelligence officers. Frankenheimer believed that you couldn't fake the way a real operative holds a weapon, scans a room, or walks like he's memorized every exit. Some had worked in Cold War surveillance. Others had served in Balkan conflicts. They weren't allowed to speak on camera, but their presence created an atmosphere of coded stillness. Several scenes like the handoff at the cafe or the arms exchange in the alley have a weight to them that goes beyond blocking. One former French operative reportedly told Reno he was holding his gun like a cowboy. Reno adjusted. That moment stayed with him. The strangest part? None of those veterans took credit. Their names aren't in the final crawl. Just shadows in the frame, just like in real life. Fact 13. The ice rink scene was originally a gunfight. One of the film's most visually jarring moments takes place on an ice rink, blood on ice, chaos among children. But that entire sequence was rewritten at the last minute. In the original script, it was supposed to be a generic alleyway shootout. Frankenheimer hated it. He wanted contrast, vulnerability, and exposure. So they scouted a local rink, rewrote the choreography overnight, and filled the scene with civilians, including children. It was a logistical nightmare, freezing temperatures, fogging lenses, and a crew working through literal cold sweat. But the outcome was electric. The sterile white of the ice magnified the violence. The slow echo of skates mixed with gunshots created an atmosphere unlike anything else in the film. The twist? Many extras on set didn't know the full extent of the scene. When blanks were fired, several children cried for real. One had to be comforted by Reno during a take, and they kept rolling. It's not just a shootout, it's innocence shattered in motion. Fact 14. Sean Bean's character was cut short for a specific reason. Sean Bean plays Spence, the cocky, gun-obsessed Brit, who's unceremoniously exposed and dismissed by De Niro. It felt abrupt, and that was the point. Originally, Spence had a much longer arc, including a redemption subplot and a potential return. But Frankenheimer hated how it diluted the film's momentum, so he cut it and gave Bean a brutal exit. The scene where De Niro forces Spence to admit his incompetence in front of the group wasn't in the script. It was developed during rehearsals, with De Niro improvising much of the cold breakdown. Bean later called it one of the most humiliating moments of my career and one of the best. The pain you see on his face isn't acting. He'd just been informed his entire third act was gone. In Ronin, failure isn't cinematic, it's just dismissal. Fact Kangs. The cafe scene was filmed like a surveillance operation. There's a quiet cafe scene in Ronin where characters sit, watch, wait, barely moving. It feels tense, almost clinical. That's because it was filmed using real surveillance tactics. Frankenheimer set up hidden cameras in actual locations, didn't inform extras of the blocking, and let the actors move through the scene with minimal direction. The crew used long lenses from rooftops and storefronts across the street. Audio was captured with directional mics hidden under tables. Most of what made it to the final cut wasn't rehearsed dialogue, it was whispers, murmurs, partial conversations. The result? A scene that feels less like a thriller and more like live intel. The characters aren't performing, they're operating. Frankenheimer later said, "Sometimes tension isn't built by movement, but by stillness. Stillness that watches. And in this case, we were the ones being watched." Fact 16. The reverse car chase was performed by a woman in a wig. In one of Ronin's most iconic action sequences, a car barrels in reverse through narrow French streets, weaving between traffic at nearly 100 kilometers per hour. Most viewers assumed it was De Niro behind the wheel, but in reality, it was a French rally driver, a woman wearing a De Niro wig. Her name was Michelle Yeoh, not the martial arts actress, but a real-life European rally champion known for her reverse driving skills. She wasn't initially hired for Ronin, but after the original stuntman struggled with reverse continuity, she was brought in as a last-minute solution. The crew adjusted the seat, gave her a black wig and coat to match De Niro's costume, and she nailed it on the first take. Most of what you see in that shot was her alone, weaving through live traffic with minimal VFX masking. The twist? She never received on-screen credit, and to this day, even hardcore fans don't know her name. She was invisible, just like a good operative. Fact 17. Frankenheimer faked a medical emergency to delay the studio. As the shoot dragged into over-budget territory, pressure from the studio mounted. The producers wanted scenes cut, corners shaved, and days dropped. Frankenheimer wasn't having it. According to crew members, he staged a medical episode, collapsing briefly on set and halting production for 2 days. When production resumed, the mood had shifted. The studio backed off, fearing liability and bad press. Frankenheimer got his extra scenes, including a longer take of the final bridge standoff that was almost cut entirely. Was it real? Some say he had a genuine panic attack. Others, closer to the director, claimed it was theater, an old-school filmmaker bluffing to protect his vision. Either way, it worked. And the film we got wasn't a compromise. It was a standoff won from the inside. Fact 18. The final scene was a riddle without a solution. In Ronin's final moments, Sam, De Niro, and Vincent, Reno, sit in a quiet cafe. There's no exposition, no triumphant exit, no explanation of what happens next. Then Sam says, "She's not coming." Vincent nods. They part ways, fade out. It's the kind of scene that begs for closure but offers none. That ambiguity was intentional. Frankenheimer wanted an ending that felt like the job never really ends. The script had 3 alternate versions, one with Deirdre returning, one with Sam getting reassigned, and one with everyone dying in a final gunfight. He rejected them all. In interviews, De Niro and Reno admitted they filmed the scene without understanding its meaning. "We thought there was a part 2 coming," Reno said. "There wasn't." The power of the scene lies in what it withholds. It isn't about winning or losing, it's about how operatives return to silence, like Ronin, like ghosts. Fact 19. The score was rewritten to be more silent. Composer Elia Kamiral originally delivered a much more traditional action thriller score for Ronin. Percussive, tense, loud, but when Frankenheimer heard it in full, he scrapped half of it and asked for something quieter, much quieter. The director wanted the music to feel like a shadow, not a spotlight, so Kamiral rewrote nearly 40% of the score in the final month. He removed major orchestral swells, stripped percussion, and introduced long silences between cues. Instead of leading scenes, the music began to haunt them, especially in the quieter standoffs and the lingering aftermath of gunfire. The result is one of the most minimalistic yet unnerving soundtracks of the 1,990 seconds. Viewers often forget it's even there, but that was the point. The final cue under the closing cafe scene is almost entirely ambient, with just one subtle instrument fading in as De Niro exits. It doesn't tell you how to feel, it just watches you decide. Fact 20. The title sequence was a tribute to samurai ink wash paintings. The moody, high-contrast title sequence of Ronin doesn't look like a typical espionage film. Black and white textures, shadowy silhouettes, unreadable environments. That wasn't a random aesthetic choice, it was a visual homage to traditional sumi-e, Japanese ink wash painting. Frankenheimer instructed the title designer to create movement like drifting memory ink that never dries. The swirling blacks evoke both smoke and calligraphy, the duality of destruction and code. None of the characters appear in the titles. No locations, no gunfire, just mood, just abstraction. It's a striking decision for a genre film and an early clue that Ronin isn't about action. It's about myth, legacy, and the spaces in between. It invites the viewer to meditate, not just consume. And in doing so, it quietly declares, this film isn't just about mercenaries, it's about lost codes written in brushstrokes that no longer make sense. Bonus fact, the film's code word was Phantom Dogs. During production, the crew referred to Ronin by a strange code name, Phantom Dogs. It appeared on call sheets, equipment cases, and internal memos. At first, it was assumed to be a generic placeholder, something to deflect attention from press or fans. But over time, the phrase took on deeper meaning among the cast and crew. Frankenheimer reportedly used it to describe the film's characters men trained to hunt, now roaming without orders, unseen and unwanted, like dogs that forget who they were barking for, he once said. The phrase began surfacing in notes, even whispered among actors between takes. De Niro, when asked years later about the codename, simply replied, "That's what we all were." What makes it more haunting is that the name never appears in the film. Not in dialogue, not in graffiti, not in props. But its spirit lingers, especially in moments of silence, when characters stare into nothing, unsure if they're chasing something or fleeing from it. Ronin never needed to say what it was about. It showed us a film about loyalty without anchors, violence without cause, identity without permanence. And behind the camera, they called it for what it truly was. Phantom dogs circling a story with no master. What do you think was really in the briefcase, if anything at all? Was Ronin a deconstruction of loyalty, or just a masterclass in ambiguity? Tell us in the comments which fact left you questioning everything and which hidden detail we missed. And more importantly, what film should we dissect next?